Hey y'all, so I'm gonna continue to jump into how I became like from wife, a newlywed, to becoming a caregiver for my husband. And as I shared in the previous video, which you can go back and watch those previous videos, like how my husband and I met and our whole experience and how, 2018 we got married and 2019 we had our first year anniversary in a different state. Um, and that was our plan. That was our plan that we were going to travel to different states, travel somewhere every year for our anniversary. However, the end of 2022, no, not 22, the end of 2020, my husband had became very, very sick, even almost to the point of death. In January 31st of 2021, my husband's doctor said, either you go to the hospital or we prepare you for hospice. So yeah, so now let me fast forward. So my husband was in a coma before he was in the medically induced coma. I was able to see him. I arrived at the hospital. This was, me sharing in the last video about how I was away doing a sleep study. Got a phone call from my husband. He wasn't saying anything. He just was giving me a signal that he could not breathe. He's just like, so I knew he couldn't breathe. I also realized that he was on the floor because I could see our bookshelf. And I'm like looking at the bookshelf, but I'm like, yeah, he got to be on the floor because we have a short bookshelf. So once they got him to the hospital, and then I was able to secure our door because the door was broke down and busted down. I secured the door, got our valuables, was able to leave out our back door, secure that door, and make sure that door locked and stuff like that. Um, Made it to the hospital. He was stable, and I'm doing all this while I'm still working. I was working full time, you know. I was working outside the home before. I was working out in the field. My job was an employment specialist for individuals who had a mental health diagnosis. And I did that for about 4 years. But I knew at this particular time, when my husband broke his neck in October of 21, I couldn't be out. I couldn't work the field anymore. So I had one on FMLA. FMLA, like if you have anyone in your life that's taking care of you, if it's yourself, use your FMLA, family medical leave assistance, I think. You're not going to be paid, but it's more than just using it for if you become pregnant or whatever. But if you have a sickness, an illness, if you have to go through surgery, if your spouse is experiencing those things in the hospital and you need to take care of them, you can go on FMLA. Now you can use your accumulated if you have sick leave or personal time, PTO. If you have that, you can use that. But if you don't have that anymore, FMLA, what it does is secure your job. So I went on FMLA while my husband was in the hospital, So, but anyway, let me fast forward. So I arrive at the hospital. I see that he's stable. And in my mind, I'm like, well, if you're stable, I think I'm going to go back home just to try to rest. I sat with him for a couple of hours and I said, well, maybe I'm going to go home just to rest because, I got to go to work tomorrow. However, the longer I sat there, I started noticing on the monitor that his blood pressure kept dropping. Eventually, the doctor came in and was like, I could tell that the doctor was like, this is not good. I didn't realize it, but my husband was going into septic shock. So immediately the doctor was like, listen, we don't have the equipment to help your husband here. So we're gonna have to send him to another hospital. And we're right now we're in the emergency department. His blood pressure keep going down. And they're like, we can't, you know, he's beyond what we're able to treat. So he contacted one of my husband's doctors and the hospital that that doctor was at they didn't have enough beds. They didn't have enough beds for the severity of my husband's situation. They didn't have enough beds for that. So the hospital that he had the major surgeries at back in February of 21, that was the hospital that they were able to get him to. It took a couple of hours, but they were able to get him to that particular hospital so that they could treat him. They got him to that hospital. put him in ICU. They started him on certain medications, certain running certain tests, just so to, just try to help get it under control, the infection that has spread throughout his blood. So once I arrived there, because I had said, okay, well, the ambulance is going to come. So the ambulance came to pick him up from that hospital to take him to the other hospital. So while in transition, I decided, let me go home. I'm going to get me a shower and make me some, get me some breakfast, whatever. So then by the time I arrived to the other hospital, my husband, they had him settled in ICU. He still looked okay, you know. He ended up they finally brought him like a lunch tray and stuff. So I helped him with, his meal. And then we were just talking and watching TV. And then I said, well, do you want me to go ahead and help wash you up, clean you up? Because, he had a rough night, I just thought maybe if I gave him a bed bath, that would help him. And just to, freshen him up. So while I was in the midst of doing that, washing his face and everything, um, he started like, there's like foam started coming out of his mouth and he started jerking and shaking. I thought he was having a seizure again. So his lips turned purple and I remember just hollering out, screaming like, nurse, nurse, please, somebody help or whatever. So the nurse, they came in, then they had to get like the respiratory team come in. Um, and what they did was they told me, well, they asked me, would it be okay for them to give him a breathing tube, put the breathing tube down his throat. So that's intubation, to intubate him. And I said, yes, that's fine. Of course, I couldn't be in the room while they did that. So they had to escort me out. And while they escorted me, I let out this loud wail, like I was crying because I was so scared and so nervous. They put the tube down his throat. And I had to wait. I think I waited for like a couple of hours before I was able to actually see him. But when I went into the waiting room, I was just crying, I'm crying, I'm crying. There was a particular person there. But let me tell you about this. Let me go back a little bit. Before I started bathing my husband, before we were just sitting there chilling, watching TV, a janitor came in and he was cleaning up in my husband's room. Just, cleaning everything up and everything. I told him thank you, just was kind to him. He was kind, he had a kind spirit himself. So let me fast forward. So now they're putting the tube down his throat and I'm in the waiting room. I'm crying, I'm crying. That same janitor who was cleaning up my husband's room was sitting there he was sitting in the actual family waiting room. I don't know why he was sitting there, but perhaps God had him there. And he just immediately began to pray over me, and for me. And as he was praying over me, I felt like this release that began to happen in my body and the burden that I've been feeling and my sadness that I had, it just began to go away. And I had already made peace with if God was to take my husband's life or take him away, that it would be well with my soul, you know. So then I reached out to others like the prayer group that I was part of, the women's group that I was part of, and they all began to pray as well, letting people know what's going on. Because even though, we don't have support here, I knew that I could call people who would pray for us. My sister ended up coming up a week after my husband was released from the hospital, and she helped me with giving him the medications and things that he needed. Certain people, some people came to visit us, but again, it's nothing like having people here, and we don't have that. you know, we don't have that here. And that's the part, it breaks my heart. But he's able to get the medical attention that he needs here, that he can't get in Florida. But family is very important. Family and having solid friends in your life, because it's hard. It's hard. Now, financially, yes, I put out the GoFundMe. That's for anybody who want to donate. We appreciate those who have donated to us. We really do. We really appreciate that. However, the Lord has continued to provide for us. So that GoFundMe is more so, it's just a wish list. It's a wish list, a wish list to get a more accessible vehicle to help, with transporting my husband and him getting and out of it. We have a car, you know, and no, I'm not working right now. I was laid off in February of 2024. Like they gave us a raise and everything, and then a month later, it was like a loss of business. So I was there for almost 3 years. But I do receive unemployment. My husband do receive disability. So the Lord is providing. However, if there was a wish list, the wish list is still there. We did get the beds, um, but the wish list is just to get, like I said, a more accessible vehicle, possibly SUV that's a little bit better for him to get in and out of, and then a more accessible home. Now we're looking at possibly getting a condo, but the building, it has to have elevators, or the money could also go towards the down payment for a house. So that's why we put the wish list out. And it's not on here. We ain't trying to beg, we ain't begging nobody for nothing. However, those are wish list items. So, but anyway, if anyone want more information about that, I can definitely provide that information to you. But I'm just sharing my story and my journey of how I went from wife to caregiver.